Hello, welcome to My German Ancestors. My name is Katja, and I will be your guide on today's journey back to the year 1816. Did you know that the eruption of a volcano in Indonesia in 1815 caused the emigration of thousands of people from Württemberg, Baden, the Palatinate, Switzerland, and Tyrol? Just 1 year later? Well, let's buckle up and find out about it.
Nestled within the vast archipelago of Indonesia lies the island of Sumbawa, home to Mount Tambora. For the people living on the island, the presence of volcanoes was a familiar part of daily life. After all, Indonesia sits on the Pacific Ring of Fire and is home to more than 150 volcanoes. Before 1815, Mount Tambora had been dormant for several centuries, only grumbling now and then, generating a few clouds of smoke, and then going back to sleep. But when it erupted on April 10, 1815, the islanders' lives would be forever changed by one of the most violent volcanic eruptions in recorded history. Sir Thomas Stamford Raffles, Governor General of the Dutch East Indies, as Indonesia was then known under Dutch colonial rule, later wrote in his memoirs that he heard the explosions over 1,600 miles away on Sumatra, and that he had initially mistaken them for gunfire. Eyewitness accounts later described how 3 immense pillars of flame had erupted from the crater, engulfing the mountain in liquid fire and showering the area with volcanic debris. Within minutes, the pyroclastic flows, that is, a fast-moving surge of superheated gas and volcanic material, swept across everything within 12 miles of the summit, burying villages and transforming the surrounding landscape. But that wasn't all. In the days and weeks that followed, the eruption triggered other natural disasters. Earthquakes shook the region, tsunamis struck nearby coastlines, and violent storms battered the island, leaving devastation in their wake and wiping out entire communities. By the time the eruptions finally ceased 3 months later, the once mighty Tambora stood diminished, stripped of more than 3,000 feet of its towering height, while an estimated 70,000 people had lost their lives. However, the suffering was not yet over for the survivors, as all their fields had been devastated and all the livestock killed. Famine and disease soon followed. Desperate, many people fled to neighboring islands, unwittingly unleashing a cholera epidemic that claimed an additional estimated 125,000 lives in the whole region. What nobody knew at the time was that the eruption of Mount Tambora had devastating consequences not only for the immediate vicinity, but also for regions far beyond. The sheer force of the explosion expelled a colossal cloud of ash, rock, and magmatic gases some 15 miles into the stratosphere. At that altitude, the fine particles were caught by global wind currents and began to spread around the world, leading to some unusual atmospheric phenomena. In the summer and fall of 1815, people across Europe reported seeing extraordinary sunsets and twilights, fiery reds, deep oranges, and purple. These stunning but eerie skies were captured by the English painter William Turner, whose vivid landscapes reflect the atmospheric changes caused by Tambora's ash. For a long time, art historians believed Turner was exaggerating the colors for dramatic effect. However, it is now widely accepted that the intense hues were a direct result of the volcanic ash lingering in the upper atmosphere. The fine particles scattered sunlight in unique ways, creating these vivid and prolonged displays. Other observers described the sun appearing dim and reddish at midday, casting an unusual light over the landscape. This prolonged twilight and the strange, colorful skies fascinated scientists and the public alike, sparking debates and curiosity across Europe. But unfortunately, the volcanic particles did more than just paint beautiful skies. It blocked sunlight and altered the global climate for years to come. People in the German states knew nothing of these distant events. In 1815, they were simply relieved that after more than 15 years, the Napoleonic Wars were finally over. For the people of the southwestern German states, the scars of war ran even deeper than anywhere else. Situated on the volatile border with France, these lands had borne the brunt of the conflict, serving as transit area for soldiers in both directions. With each passing wave of French and coalition troops, the land had been subjected to the harsh realities of war. Towns had been ransacked, crops had been destroyed, and lives had been shattered. Baden and the Palatinate were particularly affected due to their strategic location along the Rhine River, which made them key passageways for advancing and retreating armies. The French revolutionary and Napoleonic forces occupied these areas multiple times, imposing heavy requisitions on men, food, livestock, and other supplies. Additionally, both regions experienced direct battles and extensive military campaigns, leaving physical and economic devastation in their wake. Farmers and villagers often found themselves caught in the crossfire, forced to provide resources to occupying forces while struggling to maintain their own survival, often losing homes, property, and loved ones. Years of conflict drained the local economies and left the population exhausted and impoverished. When the war finally ended in 1815, large parts of Baden and Palatinate lay in ruins, and its people and governments were now facing the challenge of rebuilding homes and resuming agriculture. Municipal and state taxes were increased to finance reconstruction, placing an additional burden on the already weary populace. All this was bad enough, but due to Mount Tambora, things got even worse within the next few months. The winter of 1815-1816 brought masses of snow, followed by an unusually high amount of rain in the spring. The melting snow caused extreme flooding and landslides in the Alpine foothills, leaving a path of destruction in its wake. Villages along riverbanks found themselves submerged, and homes and farmland washed away in the relentless deluge. This was no ordinary winter. It seemed to drag on endlessly, as though the warmth of spring might never come. The sun, meanwhile, was blocked by layers of ash, causing a dramatic drop in temperatures. Days remained eerily dim, even in midday, and farmers watched helplessly as their fields failed to dry off. Hailstorms raged well into the summer, destroying fruit trees and vineyards, while potatoes, grain, and vegetables rotted in the flooded fields. In July, there was still snow in the Black Forest. Frosts even extended well into August. It became clear that 1816 was turning into a year without summer. For the already struggling people of southwestern Germany, this meant that the shortages caused by the Napoleonic Wars were now exacerbated by a natural disaster. The crop failure was followed by hunger and chaos. Livestock drowned or had to be slaughtered because they could no longer be fed. Food prices soared to unprecedented heights within a very short time, and people were so desperate that looting became common in many areas, and soon the food supply collapsed completely. And transportation was a huge issue. It wasn't like today, where goods can be shipped quickly across countries. Back in 1816, it took months to move grain from other regions to the southwest of Germany. The Rhine River was particularly important, as it served as the main transportation artery for trade and essential supplies, linking inland regions to larger markets and ports. However, due to the heavy floods, the Rhine wasn't navigable for weeks, cutting off a vital supply line. The Neckar River, an important tributary connecting inland areas of Baden and Württemberg to the Rhine, was also affected. Without these waterways functioning properly, the movement of food and goods was paralyzed. Furthermore, southwestern Germany was geographically distant from major coastal trading hubs, which made importing essential resources even more difficult. This isolation worsened the already dire food shortages and delayed any relief efforts. In their distress, people tried to make bread from straw and tree bark. They ate moss, grass, and whatever animals they could catch. The death rate skyrocketed. In 1816, there were more deaths than births, a deeply unusual occurrence in an era where families tended to be large. And then the economy collapsed as well. Agriculture was the backbone of the local economy, and with repeated crop failures, the entire economic structure began to unravel. Farmers, who might otherwise have employed seasonal workers, could no longer afford to do so, leaving agricultural laborers without income. Since most people could barely afford food, everyday purchases became a luxury. This decline in consumer spending had a ripple effect throughout the economy, causing widespread hardship for craftsmen and merchants who could no longer sell their goods and services. At the same time, industrially manufactured textiles from England, much cheaper than the home woven fabrics, flooded the German market. These English goods were produced using advanced mechanized processes, allowing factories to churn out vast quantities of fabric quickly and at a fraction of the cost. In contrast, local weavers in Germany still relied on traditional handcraft methods that were slow and labor intensive. In times of hardship, even those who valued local craftsmanship were forced to buy the cheaper imported goods simply to make ends meet. And tragically, by purchasing these low cost textiles, people contributed to the collapse of their own communities' livelihoods, displacing local craftsmen and driving out entire families into poverty. This combination of rising food prices, falling wages, and mass unemployment was devastating. Social and economic crises erupted across Württemberg, Baden, the Palatinate, Alsace, Switzerland, and Tyrol. Faced with the specter of starvation and destitution, thousands chose to leave their homes in search of a better life elsewhere. The great wave of emigration that swept through the region in 1816 and 17 marked the final chapter in a year of unparalleled hardship and suffering. By 1817, around a fifth of the population of Baden and Württemberg had emigrated, with most heading to Russia or America. This climate anomaly did not affect every region equally, yet it was felt across the globe. Where there was rain and snow in Central and Western Europe, crops withered in Spain due to one of the worst droughts of the past 500 years. In East Asia, the failed monsoon led to famine, followed by devastating floods. In North America, 1816 was an unusually cold year, with New England facing snow in June. The supply of food became difficult, prompting many people to head west and settle in Ohio, Illinois, and Indiana. 1816, the year without a summer, was called by contemporaries 1800 and froze to death. This chilling nickname reflected the profound and deadly consequences of the disrupted climate across the northern hemisphere, where no region was truly spared the effects of Mount Tambora's eruption.
Are your ancestors among those who emigrated from southwestern Germany at this time? And if yes, did you know that their immigration was triggered by a volcano in Indonesia? Please leave a comment below. I'm eager to read your thoughts. If you enjoyed this dive into German history, please click like. It helps my channel with the algorithm. And for more stories about your German ancestors, be sure to subscribe. See you all in the next one.